All right, so this is probably the only guy who can fix a violin, make a restaurant menu, and make every single pro cyclist that comes to Bakersfield cry like a baby in the corner. We have the amazing Sam Ames. Thank you for coming to our show lunch break today. I'm excited because he has made me cry many times in the foothills and many other people with some of his amazing events. He's done everything from gravel racing to the state road time trials, the state road crit races. I mean, he's done it. We've done downtown crit.
Yeah.
Everything's been out there, and Sam's been a part of that. I mean,
didn't you say he also makes countertops and bar tops? And
yeah,
like
some of the best countertops in Bakersfield that you have seen at restaurants, he probably made them. And when you see the Bakersfield Orchestra out there and they're playing their awesome wooden instruments, Sam's hands have probably fixed those or tuned them or done something. And I didn't even know that about you, Sam, because I showed up to his house one day and I seen a violin and I was like, oh, I guess somebody has something in the closet. And he was fixing it.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Well, he was fixing it. I knew him as like this macho guy, you know, who crushes people's dreams on a bike when he's riding, and he's like fixing a violin. I was like,
my softer side.
Yeah. I was like, he knows how to fix that. He's like, yeah, I do. And even one of my friends, she's in the Bakersfield Orchestra. And I was like, hey, you know my friend Sam? She's like, yeah, he's the only guy who knows how to do this. And I was like,
that's awesome.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, most people don't know that about Sam. But I know that in this story, like about him, there is, what is that? Master of one or something like that.
Master of the universe?
Well, he knows so many things. Like,
it's like Legend of Everything, Master of Nothing, or something of that nature.
So he actually has mastered many skills. And I think in Bakersfield, just the things that you have mastered have made big impacts. Like the restaurant menus, the countertops, that's just the little stuff. I think as we dig into the story, you're going to see where all those masteries have taken over and made a huge impact. But before we go there.
So Sam, tell us something that people don't know about you.
Well, first, thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be here.
Happy to have you.
I know I've put Adrian off several times, so I'm glad we finally made it. So
don't worry, I made him wait for an hour and a half. Sorry, sorry.
You got me back.
I got him back. That was a payback.
Nice, Adrian.
Fully deserve it. I didn't realize we were on Midwestern time and not California time.
Forgive me, Sam.
Something that a lot of people don't know about me, and it ties into the story of things we're probably going to talk about and all the subjects you touched upon. But I was born in Africa.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that's just kind of funny.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah. No. So my dad was in the military, and he was stationed in. It's a little convoluted with the borders now, but what at the time still is Ethiopia. But I was born in a military hospital in Mogadishu, and so we lived there for about a year, and then came back home to the States after things got a little crazy, and lived in Bakersfield all my life. But just when people say, tell me something about you that I wouldn't guess.
Well, I can tell you right now, nobody in Bakersfield has any idea that he was born in Africa.
No. Yeah. And
that's awesome. That's cool.
I guess it was kind of, my brother and sister are a lot older than I am, so I guess it was kind of a cool thing for them, I mean, this big palatial place where they could throw a football inside the house, and we left after I was a year old, so I didn't get to enjoy any of it. Anyway, kind of a fun fact, if you will.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
That's pretty awesome, though.
It's in a weird way in my head. It lays the foundation for a lot of other things that I did that have, or am doing or have done that have been unique and adventurous.
Yeah, and I think too, maybe that. Yeah, because that's wild. I never thought when you said you were going to tell us something that nobody knew about you, I was going to say maybe you have a pink bike in your garage or something like that. But to be born in Africa, and then your dad, he was in the military, or
and Mom and Dad were both in the Army. That's how they met. And so my mom, was in the Women's Army Corps, which is 1950s. I mean, my mom had me very late in life, so my parents were a lot older. But she retired, and then they married, and my dad retired as a lieutenant colonel. He's from the East Coast. My mom's from Bakersfield, so West Texas. So here.
And your
here we are,
mom
Dust Bowl
brought
Oldies.
you back.
Yeah, we had a lot of family here. You know, they did, you know, literally come Dust Bowl days to Bakersfield, like a lot of people did from
Oh,
the Mesa
wow.
and the West Texas area, and you know, so.
Did you know the Dust Bowl's like a real thing? Like when it hit
Yeah.
Bakersfield,
Oh yeah.
I was working at Murray Family Farms, and they have the old cottage way out on their
Yeah.
property.
Okay.
And I was just excavating, and I found the old sidewalk. It was 3 feet down
Wow.
in sand.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is it buried? And she's like, well, that's what the Dust Bowl is.
Yeah.
All this sand just blew in from the mountaintops and
Oh,
just
that's crazy.
rolled in.
Yeah.
And I never thought of it that way, that's where like things like that really happened.
Yeah,
during that
so
period.
there's the Bakersfield Dust Bowl story of, you know, when I was a little kid, and that was pretty gnarly. But my Dust Bowl is like the 1930s Dust Bowl of,
Oh, man.
you know, the Midwestern, you know, topsoil becoming eroded and Great Western migration of people
That's
looking for
crazy.
work and stuff. So, yeah.
So most people know you from like bike riding, being at action sports, but I think when you were younger, things started out a little bit different. Like in your athletic career, did you like start off riding BMX, racing BMX? How did you get into like
To bikes. So you know, I'm like any kid. I rode bikes around the neighborhood, and I loved riding a bike. It was, you know, in 1970s, it was just that's what you did, and you know, the quintessential thing. You know, you go out in summertime, you go out in the morning, and you come back when the street lights come on. So we rode all over the bluffs and everywhere, and so I never raced BMX. I was never into, you know, any form of organized bike racing or stuff like that. But I played a lot of baseball, so baseball was really my sport. Played, you know, a lot of obviously little league, and then into high school. And I really wanted to play college ball. I was a decent ball player. I thought, you know, maybe if I get seen in college, you know, might be an opportunity. But I found cycling one day, flipping through Wide World of Sports. So this is way back ABC, and there was a snippet of a bike race in France called Paris-Roubaix. So it's kind of a fabled classic bike race, and they're cobblestones, and the weather would be muddy and nasty and cold. And I just sat there mesmerized, going, "What the heck is this?" And so watched it, and I don't know. That was sort of the light bulb of like, man, this is kind of an interesting deal. So I worked the next summer. I worked out weighing great boxes. We were called scale boys. So you had to weigh the great boxes, and we got paid $5 an hour. And I did that all summer and saved my money and bought a bike. So I went to Snyder's and bought my first road bike for $240. And
you worked in the grape fields?
yeah, well, I was not a picker or a packer. I was the white kid that was out there weighing the 40-pound boxes in the sweltering sun while everybody else moved on, and while the smaller trucks were coming up your kazoo and people were yelling. And so, yeah, but it was, you know, it was hard work. And I mean, it was a workout. And so saved the money, bought my first bike, started riding the bike, and then decided, and then I, you know, did more research, and I decided I wanted to do a triathlon. So I started swimming in my aunt's pool and running from my house by Garces to her house off of Oswell, and then bigger rides and more adventurous stuff. So I did my first triathlon in September of 1985. And then, so I would have been a junior in high school, and I never went back to play my senior year of baseball. You know, I started playing as a freshman. I started playing varsity as a freshman.
Wow.
And yeah, that didn't go over well with my coach. And but you know, I say things in life happen for a reason. You know, I'm a firm believer in that, and it's just, the bike spoke to me, and that's kind of took it from there. So. Yeah.
Wow. So you did triathlon?
Did a couple of triathlons, and then I hated swimming. I was a fish out of water. You know, I could run. I ran a little cross country, and but I just could not.
Do you sink in the water?
I didn't sink, but man, you just get kicked and hit, and it just didn't come naturally to me.
Oh,
so
yes.
I kind of gravitated towards the bike. Raced as a junior. You know, did as much as I could do in that arena, and then as I progressed and got better and moved up categories in racing, you know, kind of got my wings and had a little bit of success. I wouldn't say anything major here in the States.
It's major.
There are a lot of people a lot better than me, but decided I want to go to Europe. So saved my money, went to Europe for basically like my senior trip, so like a month.
Yeah.
And just rode my bike around, and then came back the year after, and was like, okay, I'm going to stay here for a year, and that was a lesson in humble pie.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I would get, and I was pretty lean back then, but I would get pinched, and they're like, "You're too fat," and they said, "Don't come back next week unless you have 450 miles." on your computer.
Wow.
So, like everybody, you go do exactly what they tell you to do. So I'd ride 5, 6, 7 hours a day and eat and sleep, and it was a tough go. I made it about half the year, and then I was so homesick and just not really having any results of any kind. And the whole racing format is just different, at that time in Europe, and there was no other Americans. I mean, it's just you're living in the culture and nobody speaks English. And so I was in Spain. Awesome experience. Came home, went back one more time, had some pretty good results. Probably could have stayed and done some AAA level racing, because they have that in Europe. They have sort of farm teams that were connected to other pro teams.
So it's a big deal over there.
Yeah, but I ran out of money.
It was a big deal, like I said. Yeah.
So hope I'm not jumping too far ahead, but just giving you the nutshell of my cycling. And so ran out of money, came home. Had been working worked in the restaurant business. My aunt had owned a restaurant, so I didn't grow up in it, but I was in it a lot. What restaurant did she own? She had a little cafe out in Arvin, little truck stop cafe thing. So came back, started immediately hunting for a job that I could work at night and ride and race my bike during the day. Well, restaurant business and racing on the weekends don't exactly go hand in hand.
Right.
So I got hired at Fergatti's, and that was they were opening and building that building, and had an interview.
Same location it's at now.
Yeah, same location it's at now.
It's a great restaurant too.
Yeah, Ralph Rugletti, big shout out to Ralph. He's been a big part of my life in those days, and still is. I still consider him such a wonderful friend and mentor.
He's a great guy.
Yeah. So he, as an athlete himself, he sort of dug, and he's like, well, we got a lot of work to do. We got to open this restaurant, but we'll get you back on your bike. I want you to do that. That's a big part of your life. So.
Wow.
Well, I started working at Fergatti's, and that sort of segued into 50 and 60-hour weeks. I was very dedicated to the job, and I like to work. I'm a mover, and he and I hit it off, and he made me assistant manager, so I didn't really ever wait tables. I did that, and there's sort of the whole backstory there. But that was sort of the demise of any continued endeavor into pro cycling. It just sort of continued to race a little bit, and then eventually kind of just didn't until much later as a master, 35-year-old plus racer.
Yeah, that's even harder when you race masters.
Yeah,
I think the
those guys
older
are
you get,
even more competitive in a weird way.
Yeah. And sometimes they have more money. Like when you're racing,
they have a lot more money. Yeah,
because they have real jobs.
Yes. That was in the racing when I was racing, and even a little bit before me. That was the number one demographic of bike racers in the U.S. was masters between 35 and 55. They made up the largest number of licensed cyclists.
Yeah.
Which is, I used to always say, as one of those guys, we need to get more juniors and kids on bikes, and we all need to be mentors and not racing for glory as a 45-year-old.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it was fun. I had a lot of fun doing that later in life after, having kids, getting married, doing, other business work, and then having a little bit of time to get back into it.
So how did you get into because you're still not fixing violins yet in your life. So how in the world did you go from riding bikes, doing this, being the restaurant manager, making menus, to fixing a violin?
Well, so
that's a big gap.
I'll key off the Africa statement.
Okay.
Obviously there's no aim in time when you're born to know where your life's going to go and what it's going to do. But when I look back and I reflect on all the different endeavors I've had in my life, I always say to people, I'm a guy. I'm kind of curious by nature. Mm-hmm. I see things. I'm like, hey, I wonder how that works. I just kind of start spinning on some of those. And a lot of guys are tinkerers, and women too, for that matter. But that little telltale of I was born here and I'm just going to go and just do all these crazy unique things. I don't really have a script for. I suppose each one of them leads into another. Coming home from Europe and not having any money and needing to work gets me into the restaurant business, and then that gets me into more restaurant business. Worked for Buck Owens for a number of years at the Crystal Palace. Yeah. So then that's where I found music, and my mom had played the violin, when she was young, and so we'd always had a violin in the house, and I'd go over and make a lot of screeching sounds. So I told Buck one day, I'm like, hey, I want to learn how to play the fiddle, and I don't want to do anything. I'm not trying to be a musician. Just a hobby, just something to get into. So I started taking lessons and playing, and then I really loved that. Then I bought a really nice instrument, and then that led me being into more fascinated in the violin than I was into playing. Hence the endeavor into going to, years and years of training and luthier school and learning how to really repair an instrument. And with that came some woodworking. So, you can just sort of see how these things go. And then interwoven in that has always been the bike. The bike has been the constant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So
yeah.
you learned how to do the violin, you play it first.
I never, the violin either
Bring
comes...
the violin.
No,
I'm just kidding. I just
But
kidding.
you started with a fiddle, right?
Fiddle and violin are the same thing.
Right,
It's
right.
all in terminology, and there are a few little unique setup things,
Yeah.
but it's very, very minor.
Right,
Yeah.
right. My son loves fiddle music,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was like, I don't know if there's anywhere to get him lessons, but
Yeah, there are. Yeah, I know lots of people. I can
Right
give
on.
you numbers. It's just a fascinating instrument, and it's such a fascinating story. And if you look at the legacy, and I would read books, and it's just, I don't know, it just really kind of spoke to me.
Fascinated you.
Yeah, and I had an instrument that needed some work, and there was a very sweet older gentleman in Oildale that was still doing a lot of work, but he was like 90 years old. And
Oh, yeah.
So, his work was starting to not be probably as good as it was and whatnot. And so as I was tinkering, I remember my very first phone call from the lady that I took lessons from, and she's like, "Hey, one of my other students, the bridge broke or something. How can you fix it?" And I was like, "Well, I can try." And then I was like, I really like this, and so I just kind of went
I can do it.
heads and tails into it.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how a lot of things happen. A lot of times,
Yeah.
you kind of fall into
Yep.
it in a way.
I moonlighted for a long time. When I worked for Buck, I was doing, that was my first arena where I'd started to do a little bit of work. And then when I was at Lengthwise, working for Jeff and Darren, and those guys are lifelong family friends. We met at Forgatti's. So there's all these connectors in my story. And so, they were fine with it. It's like, people would come pick up their instruments and do things, and then the Panama School District called, and I started doing work for the school district, and it started to turn into a bigger thing than I really ever thought and really kind of wanted. But I kept trying, and I kept doing, and pretty soon I was just like, man, I'll do this for myself, and I did.
Yeah.
So when I left working for Carrie at Action Sports, that's another whole big conversation. But I did 5 years of just doing it myself. So
Wow.
yeah,
Man.
But now back to the bike business.
So you come back, you made all these countertops at bars, and you're back and you say, yeah, I helped start the Kern Willman. I've helped start all these crazy events.
Oh man, there's not enough time to cover
and
all
then you're just
all the
like,
years.
I'm trying to get to this place where you're sitting at your house and you're going like, I want some pie. No, I want some rock cobbler.
Yeah.
Like, how did you bring this idea of this crazy event called the rock cobbler?
My favorite form of cycling was always cyclocross, or in cyclocross racing. That's the thing I excelled at the best later, after I kind of quit road racing and whatnot. And it was unique, and I liked it. It just spoke to me. It's hard. You got to run with your bike. You got to hike up stuff. So that was sort of the motivation behind the cobbler and how it developed. But basically, we had been doing goofy sort of adventure rides on, cross bikes, and even I've ridden my road bike everywhere in the foothills that every mountain bike has ever been. I'm just that wacky of a guy. So it was sort of just a development. And one day we went to an event down south called the Belgian Waffle Ride, when it was very new and very small, and not the several thousand people and nationwide that they are now. And it was so cool. And it had a little funkiness to it. And my buddies and I were like, well, we should totally do something like this. And they're like, nobody's going to come. It's, and I said, well, let's just do it anyway. I mean, we're already doing it. Let's just call it a ride, and we'll throw it together. So that first year, I think we had 50 people. And
Yep.
there's when it started in 2013. And here we are now at, probably have 1,000 next year. And
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I went to watch him at this last one and took some photos, a little bit of video, but it was not a small race.
No, it's grown considerably, and I still like to try to keep it sort of, smallish and very Bakersfield-ish. And my main motivation behind it, maybe if I'm answering your question, is I love bringing people to Kern County. I love showcasing what we have here. I love the sport. I love getting people on bikes. And so, it's definitely a weekend where people can explore their inner souls of pain and suffering and throw bad words at me.
And cry.
And cry and suck their thumb and all that fun stuff. But, yeah.
But I think it's pretty unique too, because I think lots of people, when they think of an event and they think of like something we're trying to do in town, they think of like, oh yeah, let's hold a music festival, or let's do some campaign or something like that for some certain group. But nobody says we're going to get people from all over the United States, maybe even other countries, and it's going to be a cycling event. And I think that's what the Rock Cobblers turn into. Like, we get more people from different places for that event than any other event in Bakersfield. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, and I love cycling, so I don't want to have a rock concert. I want to have a bike race or a bike ride. And before the Cobbler, you mentioned this earlier. I had a partner for a while, and there was events that were not happening in Southern California, and we had roads and arenas and places to do events, cyclocross, road, mountain bike. So we started a little promotion company, and that's really kind of how that began. And the whole goal was just like, well, we can put on races. We can have another thing on this mountain bike calendar and this road cycling calendar and this calendar. And we did, and we had good success with it. Financially, it didn't really ever do much. Not that it was, we're out here to make $1 million. It just, we were in the red, for a long time.
That's not good.
And Bakersfield's in this funny hub of, we're not quite in the north, we're closer to the south, but it's a destination, whereas you've got Southern California events and Northern California events that are getting draws just because it's 20 minutes from their home. It takes an effort to get here, just like it takes an effort for me as a racer when I was racing to go someplace else.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, screw it. Let's just have stuff here, and we'll make people come here.
Yeah.
So that's how it sort of started. But the Cobbler was the one that, the light sort of shine on it, and I thought, okay, I think maybe we have something here. So I sort of quelled the other events because I just don't have time, and we focus on that now, and it's awesome. And we have had people from all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time. You can watch
Germany, Iceland.
There's
France.
all kinds of YouTube videos that they make about the event. I mean, people have gone through Sam's house. People have gone through Randy Martin's house.
The event is wacky. I mean, we're very shenanigan based, and we don't call it a race. It's a ride. Like
a ride.
Everybody from the very first finisher to the other people. Well, they make it as a race as much as they want, but everybody gets the same thing. And every year we give away, instead of giving away ribbons and trophies and things, we give away really cool stuff like laser engraved tumblers or beach towels or frying pans or
an axe.
I mean, we actually give people pretty cool. A cutting board. We actually get people useful things, and so that's sort of a little thing that we're known for. And we just try to keep it. We're trying to do things that nobody else is doing and keep it unique.
Yeah,
and very, very hard and challenging.
And the first one was, I think, a cobble, right?
A rock.
It was literally a rock.
That's awesome.
Yeah, everybody says for year 10 I need to give rocks away.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Have you done it every year?
No, I have not done it every year. In fact, I've helped most of the years.
Yeah,
but
big help.
There was only one year I couldn't help, and that's because my ankle was crushed, so couldn't do anything.
Okay.
No. Have you ever actually ridden?
Every year, I probably ride the course at least 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because
you don't participate in it during the day.
I did in the early days. The first couple times I'd ride, and then I'd cut the course and see what's going on. But it was like 100 people. Yeah. Now it's I have a job. It's like an overwhelming amount, and the course is kind of my baby. People help me influence it. But come ride day, I'm on a moto, and I don't care. Everything else will fall into place. Food will fall into place. Prizes. The course is everything to me. Yeah. And so making sure that it's styled. And now people like Adrian, friends and people I've met. I kind of had my come to Jesus meeting a year or two ago where I said, I can't do what I used to do, not by myself, but I had to farm things out. Like I call him and say, hey, I need you to take care of this section and this miles. And so I've become more the general of doing that. But people enjoying the course, not getting lost, all those things falling, and that's what's most important to me.
That's cool.
Nothing, if they can leave, I could give them, a Mercedes, and if they get lost or the course doesn't meet their expectations, it's not successful.
Yeah.
So.
And we will mention just briefly that there was an incident in the 2022 event, which somebody's bike was struck by a beast, and it actually turned the event globally. The crazy thing is, every year something happens that turns this into a global thing. And people when they went through your house, global. Everybody's like, look at this race. We went through a BMX track. Oh, look at these guys, 100 miles and they're going through a BMX track. There's always something. And this year it was so brutal that the whole entire world wanted to see it. And it was just little clips of this very tall, dark animal making contact with another rider. And
couple riders.
But I think
unplanned,
yeah,
it's completely organic.
Yeah.
What if you did do that on purpose?
Oh gosh, it would be the
my
end.
insurance carrier would not be pleased.
Oh gosh, but I think that kind of leads into one thing, and there's this question that I think really matters. I think you guys will like this. What does the bike represent to you, Sam?
So glad you asked that question, Adrian. The bike to me represents freedom, and actually represents two things. Let me back up. To me, as a young person, it represented freedom. Like, look how far I can go. Look what I can go do. I can go to Woody. I can do all this stuff, and it was just mind-numbingly, intoxicatingly awesome.
Wow.
For there later, it really became, for me as a guy who works in the industry, a vehicle to listening to Frankie's story. The bike to me is a vehicle to get people to find whatever it is they're looking, hopefully find exercise, hope, feeling better about themselves, an outlet of some kind. We make the joke, with no disrespect to churches and that sort of thing. It's like, dirt church. There's a lot of cyclists that will kind of talk about that. They don't really bring it up from a religious standpoint. They're saying it because that's their connector. They're connected to the dirt. Then there's some of us that say it because it really is our opportunity to have a connection with God and get out in the wild of the outdoors and make that connection. So it's for me, it's a vehicle. And every day that I work, get people on bikes, sell a bike, fix a bike, be an ambassador to the sport is humbling, because all of these things are all connected events. The industry.
That's super cool, because I did that like in a little bit different way, but it reminds me of snowboarding. So I really enjoy snowboarding, and I remember every time, and it was like when I first started, how I kind of got introduced to that. But it's like every time I go now, it's like I usually have like worship music on my ears, and I'm just like worshiping God, and I'm like, the mountain and like the glory of God, and it's really cool.
It really is.
I feel that.
Yeah, I've never been an overly religious person. I went to Catholic high school, partly because I lived across the street. But, I learned a lot about that. My wife's Catholic. I'd love to say I went to church every Sunday. I don't. But I find my ways to make connections with God and Scripture and understand. And I'm blessed with a lot of friends in my life that are pastors or have been pastors or have worked in counseling and mentorship to adults and to kids and other people. And every one of those experiences, I really have got to mention Randy Martin and Covenant Coffee and Covenant Community Services. Randy, as crazy as Randy can be, he has been a very, very big influence on my life. And I worked for Covenant for a couple of years when I was in between working for myself and working for Carrie. And working with the foster youth, one of the best experiences of my life. And getting to talk to some of those kids about bikes, and actually getting a couple of kids there a bike when they needed it to go to a job. So, we can go race and we can put on rock hobblers and we can do things, but a lot of people will tell you that a bike or a snowboard or something is a big connector for people in some way to bring a positive into their life. And that's what I love about what I do every day. People walk in the store and I say, I don't care if you buy a $8,000 race bike or that beach cruiser. I just want you to pedal. I want you to ride, and I want to see joy in kids' faces. The bike is such a beautiful thing and a beautiful vehicle, and you have to power it. So you got to do a little bit of work. And that's sort of my cycling, what it means to me sort of now, and how it influences people.
That's awesome.
Humbling. I love it.
That's good, Sam. That's good. And I just wanted to thank MLH Productions, Mike Harvey, Alex, and all you guys for watching and giving us likes and sending us messages. And I know that sometimes what we talk about doesn't seem special all the time, but for somebody out there, we know it is. So for you, we just thank you for watching. And also, we do want to announce that we do have some new things that are coming out. We have, I want to say it right. How do I say it, Mike?
Relevant rants.
Relative rants.
Relevant rants.
Relevant rants. And then there's another thing, though.
Dailyfreedom.org. So we put together, as we've talked about a few times, our mission in everything we do is to promote faith, family, and freedom.
Yes.
And support the organizations doing the work behind those values. Awesome. So with that, we have dailyfreedom.org, where we've compiled videos specifically on that. And then also with that, we send daily encouraging devotionals with the Bible verse and a message that hopefully will encourage all of you guys watching to go. So if you can go sign up for that as well.
That's awesome. And Sam, before we finish, do you have anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Absolutely. So I will say that my today's podcast shout out is going to go to two very important people in my life. There are so many, but at this exact moment, I want to give a big shout out to Mike Ostheimer at Calvary Chapel, Bakersfield.
That's awesome.
Mike's a long time friend from the restaurant industry, became a pastor, and has been just an amazing influence, counselor, mentor to me with Scripture, and at times in my life when I've needed him and been able to call upon him. And I don't care what's going on or what's happening. He's within 5 minutes, he's either in front of me or he's called me back.
That's
and
cool.
he's a man that I respect very, very.
And he
great
did
deal.
it just today.
He did it just today.
Yeah.
So yeah, you saw that. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to get the church
Right
name
away.
wrong.
Yeah.
And so I love you, Mike, and thank you. And then certainly it goes without saying that my wife is probably,
Hey.
the most important thing
Yeah.
in the world to me.
Praise God for awesome wives.
Yeah, she is. She is beyond words, and
cool.
it's just humbling every day to watch what she does, working with children, working with our family, putting up with my madness. And I love you, Andrea. So thank you.
That's perfect. Well, thank you guys for watching. We will catch you on the next one.